you're still talking
Yes.
to a CEO or you're talking to a CFO. The CFO doesn't become a financial person when you're talking to him. He's still a human being that has a responsibility on a financial. So it's interesting that people kind of have that point of view. You're right. You are ultimately talking to human beings. You're talking to people all the time. All the time. That's what we do.
Welcome to the Workable Show. We are a community of lifelong learners. We are obsessed with building a meaningful career and doing work that matters to us. If at any point you've learned something on the show, or if you've appreciated anything that the guests have shared here on the Workable, please consider subscribing and you'll get notified when any new episodes are on their way. Today, we are super privileged to have with us on the show Mr. Ahmed Tilly. Ahmed is a creative consultant with over 25 years' experience in the marketing, advertising, and creative communication industry. Ahmed founded the legendary Black River FC creative agency in 2005, where he worked alongside brands like First for Women, Mini, Virgin Money, Mazda, and just a bunch of others. Ahmed has famously conceptualized and worked to institutionalize the now globally reputable Nando's campaigns, which we've all come to love and appreciate, along with a unique brand of humor and political commentary. Ahmed has won numerous awards, too many to mention here on the show, but not just for his work, also for the manner in which he is respected and looked up to by other creative leaders here and around the world. He is bringing both his expertise and experience as a creative giant to the judging panels of the South African Lurie Awards and the International Cannes Lion Festival, which is amazing. I first met Ahmed when he graciously agreed to come and spend a few minutes with our team on invitation of a former colleague of his and a current colleague of mine, Marley, and he just came and spent some time with our team at Craft Design Smiths. I was immediately impressed by his generous nature, his humble approach, especially the sincerity with which he connected with us and communicated to us as strangers, as we were friends. And that was incredible to me. So Ahmed, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here with us. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mina. Thanks for having me on the show. I really enjoyed chatting to you guys.
We talked just before we started. We talked about a specific moment, and I want to ask you about that specific moment in your career. You've of course had an incredible, interesting, and inspiring career, but there was a specific moment in 2005 when you came to a watershed moment, had to make a couple of tough decisions about whether to go this way or that way. The decision that you took kind of set the scene for the rest of your career. So tell us about that fateful day or season in 2005 in Mill Park in Johannesburg when you were there. What were some of the things that you thought through, the emotions that happened? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I mean, I think it was a watershed moment because I probably learned more than I have in my entire career in that space that I was with Black River FC. I was working for the Jupiter Drawing Room at that time, and the Jupiter Drawing Room decided to open this office. And, you're sitting there with it at that point, an agency that was hugely successful, was the envy of the industry, and everyone wanted to work there. And like most young creatives, I had this aspiration of starting my own agency. And I had Ross and Kevin and Joe, the founders of Jupiter, who gave me and endowed me with this massive responsibility. And there I found myself in these four very orange walls, the little office that we had at our very first office. It was a bright, bright orange office. And I was sitting there together with one of the founding people who were with me, Spike Onyeni. And I sat there and I went, oh, this is it. This is what I've always hoped for. And here I am. Now what? And I think I was, in the overwhelming excitement of actually having your own thing and creating your own destiny. Was overshadowed a little with the fear of messing this whole thing up. And I remember very clearly sitting there going like, okay, this is real. This is now the point where you have no one to blame, and you've got to make this happen. How are you going to do it? And so, I think that was a very important point in my career, because what followed, as it turns out, was one of the sharpest learning curves for me. And also, the place, like you said, Madly was there, and the place where I met some of the most amazing individuals and have, had the opportunity of working really intimately with those people. So it was amazing for many reasons, notwithstanding the fear that comes with or the responsibility that comes with starting your own
Yes.
place.
Oh my goodness, that makes sense. Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit. Talk to us a little bit. Tell us how your career developed. Give us like a 30,000-foot perspective of kind of where you started. What were the biggest milestones all the way to where you are now, and just talk us through how that developed a little bit.
I think I have to start off by saying how different I felt I was growing up. I really did. I really wasn't sure that I was very much like a lot of the people that I was surrounded by, and they were amazing and wonderful people, but I just felt like different things inspired me, and I felt personally that I thought in a different manner and I had different aspirations. And I grew up in a little town in Polokwane. I grew up in Polokwane, and that was the beginning of me discovering that I may be a little different to the people that I was surrounded by. That was the first thing. The second thing was I was a failed student at architecture. So let's go there. So I was convinced,
I'm
unlike
sorry.
most. No, I'm actually I love what I do, but I do sometimes wonder what it would have been like. Like, unlike most kids who don't know what they wanted to do in school, I was convinced I was going to be an architect. And I realized when I started studying it how important math and science was. And I was not good at that at all. And I dropped out and only discovered advertising on campus when there was some students from AAA there. And I discovered this thing and I was like, wait, hold on a second. Someone gets paid to come up with ideas and write. Like, I love words and I love ideas, and this is not a classic job. And suddenly, all the things that I thought I was like weird and different about, there was a home for it. And I found myself in advertising. Went to AAA school, and started my first job with at FCB, and sort of did the circuit, if you want to call it that. Did FCB, did publicist. And then I think a defining moment was me joining Jupiter Drawing Room Cape Town, where I took a salary drop. I had a 10-day-old baby, packed up and moved to Cape Town to be a writer for the designers, which is not even the what I had been doing for the 4 years before that. And I think that was the first university, the undergrad that I got in creativity, where I found an amazing culture, a culture that sort of bred creativity above all else, and great human interactions, and the rest of it was a special place that then led to Black River FC and me co-founding it with Ross Charles and Joanne Thomas and Kevin Aspos, and Black River then happened. And Black River was essentially the University of Learning for the next 12 or 13 years. And then I moved on to FCB when I left Black River as the Chief Creative Officer of like the Johannesburg office and the Hello Computer office. It was a very big job. And I spent 4 years there until eventually I probably led to we were talking about this earlier, my second watershed moment, which happened like 4 years ago. In fact, in the middle of lockdown or just before lockdown happened.
Yeah.
Where I just realized like I wasn't happy anymore. And maybe it was 20 odd years of this business that burnt me out. I don't know what it was, but I knew I was not happy, and I didn't feel like I was doing the best work I could do, which led to this watershed moment of me going, I've got to stop what I'm doing. I've got to start something else. And I started a creative consultancy, which by definition doesn't quite exist in South Africa. And so I did that and jumped in both feet first, and trying to figure it out now. So that was my second watershed moment. That brings us to today. Hopefully that's a brief enough history.
I'm sure there are many things in between that we can talk about, but it's obviously been a career, not just what has been, but also what is still ahead of you, fueled by creativity, inspiration. And I think the next two questions, I want to ask you something that is more for personal. We'll get to all the learning things in a moment, but that is just for personal interest for myself, a little bit too selfish questions, because I've learned so much from you when you came to talk to us at Craft. So I wanted to have some more of that for myself. But just talk to us a little bit. I'm sure you get asked this question every single time. For you, where does ideas come from and creativity? Like, how do you harness that, capture that? If that's even something you can put into words.
Sure, that's a very tough question, but I think if I have to respond spontaneously, I'm going to say that creativity comes from problems, right? Unsolvable things. I think
Yes.
that's for me, the purest definition of creativity. And if you look at inventors of old, I'm not just talking about ad people, I'm talking about creativity in its pure essence. It always comes from the unsolvable. That flexes our minds in such ways to find the solution, to find a solution, and then the layer over it, which I believe is another aspect of creativity, is finding a solution that's unexpected, that's surprising and delightful as well. So
Yes.
I think that for me is my essence of creativity is like, and by the way, it's a thing that drives me as a human. I've had enough time to understand what I love, and I do love advertising, but I don't necessarily love making ads as much as I do solving unsolvable problems in unexpected ways. And the
So,
unexpected thing is the joy in it, isn't it?
yeah, and the surprise, the delight that happens.
Yes, absolutely.
So when I researched a little bit and I just read through all your many accolades and the things, there were two things that stood out for me. That this was the one, this almost bottomless um, pits of creativity that just seems to boil over. And then the second one was decades long life sustaining relationships, and especially in the creative industry, especially where people are super competitive and that one idea has to better than the next person's idea, where we have cliches like ad men and madmen and things like that. How did you manage, and how are you still managing to create and maintain lifelong relationships where people who are partners or colleagues become friends and it lasts for decades long? Like, what's your advice for some of us who are just starting out?
Well, I mean, I think it's again connected to a very conscious moment at Black River FC because I think prior to Black River FC, I was kind of trying to advance my career and climb up the ladder. And when I got to Black River FC, it was like a place where I was self-discovery. And one of the things I
Mm,
realized is, okay, the bottom line is, it doesn't matter which agency it is, and every agency will tell you different stories about who they are. We're all very similar. And I had an
mm,
opportunity to create something, and what I wanted to create was a place that made life better for everyone who walked through those doors. It sounds like a very lofty ideal, but like it actually came from a smaller, probably less significant place, which was I wanted people to come to work and have fun. And to
mm,
be able to do that, you've got to create an environment that is absent of fear. Like the minute you have fear, you have anxiety. When you have anxiety, you don't have realness. You don't have anything.
mm,
So my primary objective was to create an environment in which people felt really free to be themselves, right? And what I didn't realize is
mm,
in inviting this and being conscious of this, I affected a lot of people and they affected me. Like you spoke about Madly. Madly comes into the studio, for example, in my studio. We discovered this young lady at that time, Madly, and she brought a whole lot of knowledge to me that I hadn't had before. And I hope that we, as an agency, supplied her with the culture. And I think as
mm,
I did that with so many different diverse people that came through those doors, I realized how important those relationships were. And it's interesting, Maynard, by the way, that you mentioned this because fast forward like a decade later, now I've started my own
mm,
business. And it's really, I mean, I haven't marketed my business yet and I'm not flourishing yet. I'm still struggling as a startup. But it's amazing how
mm.
many of those people are willing to help me out because of
Yeah.
relationships that I've built before and because of reputation. And I think I've gone through the advertising having met some of the most interesting, most wonderful people, and that is the truth. So the Mad Men was an era of advertising, I believe, that existed in our South African industry a generation before mine. I was exposed to some of that. But I think that
Yeah.
the industry had changed for the better, where there was a lot more friendliness and warmth amongst people in the industry. And I think it's probably a misrepresentation that ad people or creative people are all about ego, because I've met some of the most wonderful people in the industry and have made my life and my industry so much richer and fuller.
Yes, yeah, I can deeply identify with that. So, Ahmed, thanks. But I mean, we talked about creativity, we talked about relationships, but over the course of your career, I said here 25 years in the marketing industry, such a rich and textured career with so many interesting people. If you had to think of, and I'm not sure if anybody's ever asked you this question, but if you had to think of the 3 or 4 or how many ever lessons that you can almost like write across this career so far, what are some of the biggest insights or lessons that you have learned for yourself? And we'll get to what you are learning now in a moment. But if you look back, what are some of those deep truths that you think, my goodness, these are things that I've learned?
I should have prepared myself for that one, because I probably rattle off a few lessons, and then I'm going to think, oh shucks, I should have said this. I think we've touched on one of them, which I think is a critical thing, which is
Yeah.
relationships, right? I think that's the one lesson I learned, is that every single person you encounter has something to teach you. I think that's the most critical lesson. I think when you jump in as a junior, you're learning from the seniors. But I think a critical point really comes in when you become the senior, to never stop thinking you can't learn from the junior. And I found great success just listening to young people around me. So I think that was the one lesson. The other lesson I've learned is that it sounds a little cliche, but if you don't love what you do, you can't be good at it, right? So
Yeah.
keep reminding yourself about that thing that you love, not advertising. What is it within it that you love? And so connected to that for me was, I loved having fun with the people that I was with. So fun, I learned that the less fun you're having, the less good you are at it. And there's a direct correlation between the fun times I've had in my career and the accolades that have come with it. It's an interesting thing. The most fun times I've had are directly connected to the most successful periods in my career. So that's
Yeah.
another thing. And I guess the last thing I have to talk about is just being respectful. And I learned this lesson also because I think advertising, if it can be accused of one thing, is hating on clients. That's like you're talking, and it's like an ad joke, the clients like this, the clients like that. And I learned that I've had some really tough clients, I've had some really bad clients, I've had poor clients, but I've also learned that when I respected the clients that I was with, that the success was very directly linked to them as well. So I was been
Yeah.
blessed to have some amazing clients. I mean, I just met one yesterday. I met Tom Creamer from Teleshow Group, and I don't have any more of his business, but like sitting with him was like an education. It was inspiring, and I had the greatest respect for that man, like I did for Josie McKenzie or Robbie Bros, and I'm going to forget some, Karen Valler from Mini. There's so many of them that I've encountered in my life that I have this deepest. Recently working with Wendy Bergstein and Janice, those, like, when you have that respect for those clients, the respect kind of begets the respect, but the product of that respect is braver work. So I think that would be a third lesson, and I guess the last lesson would be, you haven't achieved anything yet. Doesn't matter where you are in your career. I still feel like I've started, man. I feel like there's something. I don't know what it is,
Yes.
but there's something great. I've got to achieve something great, and I think that's the final lesson, is that when you think you've made it, and I often joke about this, and probably a few people who see this might feel a little slighted by what I'm about to say. But when I see on the social media when it says an award-winning copywriter, I kind of get a bit judgy about it, because it almost assumes a sense of accomplishment and finality. Like, oh, I've won the award, therefore I can now call myself this. And I don't think you can end. I think there has to be more that you can reach for, and more that you desire and burn for, because in the absence of that, you're actually just going to be an average creative person. So I think that would be
Yeah.
my final lesson. I
That
don't know. No, go ahead.
no, those are brilliant. I can identify with all of those. It is, as I'm listening to you, it's obviously apparent that you love learning. You're constantly learning. You're soaking up everything from people and everywhere you can. And so my question to you is, like, how do you learn? You just said that you've done the best work when it's with people that you respected in a fun way, which I can deeply identify with. But when you compare what you've learned from a formal institution like AAA so many years ago, learning in some other informal context, maybe just doing the work, being with people that mentor you and where you learn from, what is your preferred ways of learning new things, picking up new skills? Like, how does that come to you?
It's probably the thing that intimidates me the most, but learning for me is exposing yourself to something you don't know at all, right? And jumping into
Yeah.
this thing about starting my own business is my learning curve again. Because I've always been, whether I've been a partner or a co-founder or a shareholder or a junior writer, whatever it is, I've always had other people kind of take care of those things. And now I'm starting to realize that it's very different to running a startup, essentially, and figuring it out. And for me, exposing myself to something that I have no real knowledge about is by actually jumping into it is learning in itself. So it's absolute trial and error. It's like anything. If you have to pick up a guitar and you don't know how to play it, you've got to,
Yeah.
you've got to play it badly. You've got to play it
Yes.
badly
Yeah.
before you can become a maestro. And I think for me that's learning, like in anything, but particularly in my career right now, the learning is how to start your business from scratch. How do you get a name for it? How do you develop it? What is the mission for it? Where do you go with it? All of that stuff. How do you run the finances of it? How do you have a company registered? How do you get a website? All of those things are actually new things because I've always depended on other people to do that. So for me, learning is an ongoing thing. And the only way to learn is to do it badly, right? So this is probably
And
my 3 years of doing this consultancy badly. Let's hope it gets better.
I'm sure you're doing it brilliantly. I'm happy that you're learning. So, I mean, if you say what you're doing now is your steepest learning curve, of course, I'm interested in what are the things that you're learning now, whether it's technical things or whether it's something that you are just learning about yourself or about other people. If you had to distill it down to one specific thing, what is one thing that you're waking up to now in your life when you're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm a beginner at this again, or
I
for the
think
first
all
time?
of yeah, I think I mentioned those and you mentioned them. I think all of those are learning curves. But I think for me, if I have to crystallize it into one thing is, and here's going to sound really ironic, but I'm really starting to learn who I truly am. Because what I have
Mm,
now is the ability not of what I do, but what I choose to not do. And I'm starting to understand
mm,
the things I don't want to do, the things I don't feel I should be doing, the things I feel like I'm bad at doing. And so I'm actually starting to find out my true self now because when you work in an environment where you've got shareholders, you ultimately have to some degree be doing what other people expect you to do. And for the first time,
mm.
I'm the shareholder, I'm the founder, I'm the writer, I'm the strategist, and I own the business. The question is, what is it that I want to do? What is it that I believe I'm best at? And so that journey of self-discovery is has started all again at 47 years of age, and now I'm 49, where I'm starting to learn this is who I am, this is what makes me best. And if I am the best I am, then I'm going to be really amazing to the clients that I serve. So that's been interesting is being able to go like, I want that piece of business. Or as I've said now to a couple of clients who've approached me and I've said, I don't think you need me. I don't think I can do what you need me to because so that's been an interesting learning versus taking on the money or taking on the business. It's about saying, I don't think I'm right for you because I now know who I am, and that for me has been the steepest learning, most strenuous learning also, because you've got to learn some hard stuff
Yeah.
about yourself, right? You got to go, I'm actually not the best at this. I'm better at that. You can't hide behind
Mm.
other people or other things. You are completely exposed, and it's been quite liberating to be able to say things like, "Yeah, I can write well, but I know there are better writers that can do that. I
Yeah.
may be better
Yeah.
at this than I am at that." So learning what I'm really good at, what I really love, what I enjoy, what I don't want to do has been the main learning for me at the moment. Yeah.
So tell me if you like as you work with other companies and with clients and other people, you of course have exposure to a lot of industries and people. The world has significantly changed in the last couple of
Yeah.
years. And the things that we thought was going to make us successful all of a sudden are things that are not making that much big of a difference in the world anymore. And the things that we maybe have thought are things that we can just leave by the wayside are now crucial skills and tools, and it has just changed dramatically. So in your opinion, what do you think is the most important skill in the workplace right now? Not just in the creative industry, but just in working with people and adding value. What do you think is that almost that non-negotiable thing that everybody needs to learn in this day and age in the work that we're doing?
It's going to sound like a buzzword, and it's not something that I believe is new. I think maybe our environment has made us more aware of it, but I've always believed in empathy. I believe that empathy in the work environment is the most critical thing. So before you can get collaboration, before you can get efficiencies, before you can get productivity, all of that stuff, at the heart of everything is empathy, is the human being. It's quite interesting because companies have come through a generation where they've gone, oh, let's not make a product and then sell it to the consumers. Let's see what the consumer needs and then create a product that suits that need, right? So that's empathy in a way. Yet in the organizations, the corporations themselves weren't empathetic towards their own people. And I mean, this is again Black River FC lesson and Jupiter. And Jupiter was a very empathetic place, an environment in which we understood human beings, what they needed, what made them tick. And I think once you get that, you get a beautiful magic that happens inside the organization that boosts everything and creates magic. So it boosts productivity and efficiencies and all of those sort of corporate metrics. But it does it in the most human way because people buy into the organization that's bought into them. And so for me, I think like when you look at also the work from home thing that's happened now, interesting juncture in our lives. How many companies are going to go back to full-time work? And how many are going to be empathetic enough to understand that people actually prefer to have some kind of hybrid or whatever it is? The most empathetic companies will have responded to that as a permanent fixture, as an example. But I've loved seeing what happened over COVID because, I've always had several single mothers that worked for me at Black River FC, or single fathers, actually. And it was interesting because I grew up in an era where, if I wasn't at work at 8:30 sharp, even though I had to drop my kids off at school or whatever, nobody cared. And now, like when I got to Black River, I understood that, Maxine needs to go and pick up her son from school at 1:00. And so she won't be here at 1. Or, Fuad is a Muslim person who works with me and he's fasting. So he's generally going to be a little pup today. And there needs to be some understanding about that because when Fuad does get back after his month of fast, he is a guy that's going to put in 110% in. So empathy is, that's why I said empathy, I don't think it's a word for the future. I think it's something that's should always have been there. But I think that the world changing has helped us highlight how critical it is in making money, actually. You have to do it. It takes humans. It takes humans to make money. You've got to identify humans. You've got to respect them to do anything.
I heard an interesting quote the other day where the author said it doesn't matter. He said all customers are people, and all clients and all investors are still 100% people. And if you don't understand people and you don't empathize with people on a human level, you don't understand business. You don't get business. Those two are intimately connected.
It's interesting. It's very true. Like, I do some work sometimes for B2B, and it's quite an interesting concept, business to business. So you'll notice in terms of advertising, you'll have a B2C, which is business to consumer communication that tries to be warm and heartfelt and puts the consumer in the middle of it. And then suddenly, when you're doing a B2B thing, the language changes, becomes quite corporate and becomes formal. But you're actually talking to a decision maker in the business, right? So it's actually not B2B, it's B2P. You're still talking to a CEO or you're talking to a CFO. CFO doesn't become a financial person when you're talking to him. He's still a human being that has a responsibility on a financial. So it's interesting that people kind of have that point of view. You're right. You are ultimately talking to human beings. You're talking to people all the time. That's what we do. That's actually what we do.
Yeah. All right. So, I think the one thing that I've learned from you when we first had our conversation, but now today even more so, is just, and I'm sure I'm sure if you give us a little bit more of a detailed look behind the scenes, which we're not going to do now, we'll definitely see how hectic the tapestry can be at the other end. But for me, it seems like you're just cruising through transitions and changes quite effortlessly. And I know when it seems like that, it is because people are really, really good at what they do. So my question to you is, some people out there today, whether they are permanently employed or whether they're making the jump to do their own thing, or coming back maybe from a failed individual and entrepreneurial endeavor back into corporate world, people that are going through professional transitions, what's your advice to them?
Sure, that's a tough one. I mean, the thing is, I don't think any of those decisions are easy. So I think you're right. From the surface or from the outside, it appears that it's effortless, but the inner
Mm.
turmoil is scary, man. It's like,
Mm.
let me put it this way. When I left FCB, I left the best title I could have in South Africa. Chief Creative Officer, one of the greatest or oldest, biggest agencies in the country, one of the most accomplished agencies in the country. I left at a time without having a secured next step, right? And
Mm.
without having a secured bank balance to allow me that I had a little cushion that allowed me some time before I made my next move. I also left on the 23rd of March, 2020, 2 days or 3 days after which we went into lockdown. I have a
Yes.
family of five. I've got three kids who depend on me, and they're going through university and school and sneakers. So I think I don't believe anything is effortless. I think that the inner turmoil for me is in a weird sense comforting because it means that you are conscious enough about where you are or about where you want to be able to make a really difficult move. So I think the advice is whether you're jumping back into corporate, something I may have to do or want to do, or you starting your want to jump your and start your own business. It's never an easy decision to make, but it's a decision that needs to be made nonetheless, right? And you've got to
Mm.
fight through the 100 arrows coming towards you to get through that thing because I don't believe it's easy. I don't think anyone's going to put any on your plate and go try this thing. It's going to work out for sure, or we'll give you the backing, whatever. You've got to be able to jump somewhere that feeds your soul.
Mm.
And if it doesn't happen, and this is what I'm learning, and I've learned this over the last few years, is that if it doesn't work out, that's okay.
Yeah.
Something else will have to work out. And I think that's the important thing is that you've got to push through the turmoil if you want to grow. There's no growth without any resistance. And if you are moving up a ladder or whatever it is, effortlessly and seamlessly, I don't think you're growing as a human being. I think you're just moving
Oh,
directionless.
oh my goodness. It is true. you're reminding me of something that I read the other day that said that everything that is healthy grows. And that growth is always painful. It's always stretching. But it's a
So true.
sign of health and forward progress. Ahmed, I think on that daunting yet super inspiring tone, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been such a privilege to learn from you and spend this time with you. The best of luck with everything that's still ahead. And I think I agree with you. I think you're right. I think the best is yet to come. What was just the start. And if we talk again in a couple of years, we'll be talking. We won't be discussing any award-winning agencies or things like that. We'll just talk about these things, the lessons that we've learned with people and how we journey with people. Those are the big
That,
lessons, I think.
that's what it's about. So thank you so much for having me on your show. And I just want to round up by saying that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned is that we're journeying through life and
Mm.
one day we're not going to be here anymore. What you want to be remembered for, and I don't want Ahmed made this Nando's ad on my tombstone. No, I want hopefully have something there that I have affected someone's life, and that's the journey we're on. So yeah, no matter what industry we're in, we are in the business of people, and let's make the journey fun and rewarding and exciting. And again, thank you. Just to say thank you so much
Yeah.
for the opportunity to ramble the way I have. Thank you.
No, of course. Just to everybody that's listening, we'll share, or if you're watching, I'll share some of Ahmed's social media details in the description. You'll be able to connect with him there. Follow along as I have. I've been learning so much from everything that Ahmed shares online. Super inspiring. But thank you so much for listening, and see you soon. Bye.